Thank you, everybody that has joined us for today's WRASAP Network quarterly meeting. This is the quarterly meeting for the Western Regional Agricultural Stress Assistance Program. My name is Esmeralda Mandujano, and I am with the California AgrAbility out of the University of California at Davis. Our program is responsible for hosting this network quarterly meetings for the WRASAP Network program. And today's presenter is going to be one of our very own, Mauricio Guerrero-Villanueva. Like I said, he's with the California AgrAbility, and I will speak a little bit more about our presenter today. He's going to be giving us a talk on community talks for community building and developing mental gardening outreach events, mental health outreach gardening events. Okay, so first I'll like to talk about the mission of that led to WRASAP. WRASAP is a program that is funded by the USDA NIFA under the United States Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network, and the grant establishes regional networks that connect agricultural producers, which includes farmers, ranchers, farm workers, and others in agricultural related occupations, with resources to assist them in times of stress. It also really has a focus of raising awareness about farm stress. Again. And under this USDA NIFA program, there are 4 regional programs in the United States. You can find out more information about each of these FARSAN regions on our webpage under farmstress.us under the About tab. For the Western region, we are covering 13 Western states and 4 territories, which includes Guam, Micronesia, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, as well as the 13 states. And WRASAP has a lot of different partners because it's a large program. The core partner is, and our leaders are at Washington State University. Some of the other partners include the University of Nevada at Reno, Montana State University, and they lead our efforts under baseline analysis. Other partners include Utah State University, the Colorado AgrAbility Program, the National AgrAbility Program, which, as we'll learn later today, they help us host regional events that include behavioral and mental health topics in agricultural occupations. We also have as a partner Farm Aid and the University of Idaho and Rocky Mountain Farmers Units, which I think they are now the AgWell. Specifically for WRASAP, the efforts include a clearinghouse. This clearinghouse builds a comprehensible searchable database to facilitate easier navigation of resources. A lot of the resources are brought in from the Farm Aid web pages and their own database, and they're constantly being updated. We also have a small grants program. The small grants program has funding up to $10,000 on 3 different areas, the area of outreach, the area of translation, and the area of professional development. Another effort of the WRASAP includes extending existing hotline operation hours and training for line staff to better support agricultural populations, more specifically extending the operation hours of the Farm Aid hotline. Another great thing is that as of July 16th, nationally, the 988 Suicide Lifeline number is now active. And we hope to work also with those operators to prepare them to serve agricultural populations when they do get calls to the 988 line. So I think it's been a great effort and also very accurate from our leaders at Washington State University to focus on efforts on increasing what is already existing out there and supporting extending the hotline hours and supporting training the staff. And lastly, another effort is the networking effort, which is for what we are here today. The network effort is to expand collaboration of the network to ensure culturally humble community outreach to support the region. And the region, like I said, includes the states of Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, Utah, Washington, Wyoming, as well as the other 4 regions. So for the WRASAP Network quarterly meetings, our goals are to make this a space where stakeholders are able to build connections and collaboration to assist agricultural producers in times of stress, to improve behavioral health awareness, literacy, and outcomes for agricultural producers, their families, and communities. And it also, it is a space for collaborators to present their efforts and offer opportunities to pose questions and bring experiences to the table. The meeting is open to the public and to external partners. So now we're going to do an icebreaker because it is a networking meeting. We'll like to get people into smaller groups to get to know each other. We're going to ask you to share your name, your role in your organization, what organization you are with, or if you're a community member, what community are you from, and to share what is your favorite thing about harvest season or the summer. Some examples could be community festivals and vacations. So now we're going to invite you to join a breakout room.
Esme, you're muted.
Thank you for telling me, Julie, and thank you for sharing with us, Tess, about the regional AgrAbility training coming. I was looking for the link directly to send everybody to the information on the AgrAbility webpage. So I did put that on the chat.
Oh, thank you.
And would you mind putting up the slide one more time? Just to make sure that we get it into the recording. Great. Thank you, Tess. So the other regional AgrAbility training conference that will happen in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And Julie, would you like to share a little bit with us about that?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. I was volunteered to be on the, and I was thrilled to do it, to be on the planning team for the for the regional AgrAbility conference in New Mexico. And it's going to be September 27th and 28th in Albuquerque. And the really exciting thing is we're being hosted by SIPI. It's SIPI, it's the Indian Polytechnic Institute. And so the focus is going to be quite a bit on indigenous cultures and farm stress and AgrAbility needs. And one of the exciting things that I am doing for this is Rachel Van Boven, one of our farm aid operators, and I have been working together on looking at our traditional and typical pathways of educating people on farm stress, such as QPR and mental health first aid. Thank you, Esme, Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute. And what we've been trying to do is build a little bit more cultural relevance for some either indigenous or populations that have more value in storytelling and narrative. And so we're going to work on some narratives and how to build farm stress awareness within those narratives, and just learn how storytelling can help with some of either people experiencing farm stress or with people who are providing services to people experiencing farm stress. And so we're really excited about that. And there will be, I'm sure we will do it more than once. So far we have 2 places that we're going to kind of build this kind of storytelling narrative into some of our trainings, mental health awareness trainings.
Thank you, Julie. Yes, that conference I just put in the chat too. The AgrAbility Regional Conference in New Mexico will happen September 27th through 28th. The registration is not up yet on the webpage, but it will pop up in the same link that I put in the chat where we currently have the registration information for the Reno, Nevada conference. So all of that information will populate into that webpage. So it's a good one to keep around. And both of these regional AgrAbility trainings also serve as networking spaces for individuals that are doing work on farm stress, whether it's from the Western region or the other region. So one of the reasons why those workshops are held in states in the West is to create more networking opportunities for those of us that are working in this Western region. So thank you, Tess. Thank you, Julie, for sharing with us about those exciting events coming up. I do recommend it if you guys have not been able to attend an AgrAbility regional conference that you check it out. And if you see that that is something that you are interested in, you can, we also encourage you to apply for one of the small grants, professional development grants that we have under the farmstress.us webpage, because that is specifically what the professional development training grants are available for, to get individuals to training opportunities such as these regional AgrAbility trainings. Okay, so without further ado, we'll move on to our main presentation for today. Our presenter is Mauricio Guerrero-Villanueva. He is a Master's of Public Health candidate at the University of California in Davis, and he's going to be presenting on community talks for community building and developing mental health gardening outreach events. Like I said, he is one of our students here at the California AgrAbility program, and he has extensive experience working in the community where he developed his practicum project. And that was very important to us when we selected him to come onto this project, because when we're talking about behavioral health, it's important to have somebody that the community has seen before and has trust in. And Mauricio proved to be very dedicated into this project, and community members really grew to recognize him and feel like they could reach out to him for questions regarding the events that we were doing, or anything regarding to the efforts that we were putting forth. So Mauricio, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Esmeralda, for that introduction. So hello, everyone. My name is Mauricio Guerrero-Villanueva, and today I'll be talking about my project, which was a community talks for community building and developing mental health gardening outreach events. Before I go ahead and get started, I did want to talk a little bit more about myself. My hometown is Oakland, California. And during my undergrad, I went to UC Davis, where I got my bachelor's in clinical nutrition. And during this time, as Esmeralda mentioned, I volunteered at the Night Landing One Health Clinic as a health educator, where I gained a lot of experience in health education counseling and also conducting workshops in the community, such as cooking workshops. Throughout my undergrad, I wanted to be a dietitian, but throughout my experiences and towards the end of my undergrad experience, I realized that I wanted to take more of a population approach to health, which sparked my interest in the Masters of Public Health. And after I finished my undergrad, I took a year off where I became a program coordinator at a cooking and nutrition nonprofit in the Bay Area called 18 Reasons. And I also through there, I gained a lot of experience working with the community, and it helped cement my interest in pursuing a Master's of Public Health. And after that, I applied to the MPH program at UC Davis, where luckily I got in. And throughout this past year, while being an MPH student, I have been a graduate student researcher at California AgrAbility for WRASAP, where I have been working on my project. And the agenda for today, so first I'll go over some background about farm worker mental health and gardening and mental health, and then I'll go over the project objectives. Then I'll go over the pathway that I took for my project, the whole planning process. And then I'll go over the results from the focus groups and surveys that were conducted in the community. And then I'll go over how the event turned out. The event happened really recently, this past Sunday, so I'll be going over how that turned out. And finally, I will be going over some recommendations based on the focus groups and surveys that were conducted. So as promised, I'm going to go over some background about farm worker mental health. There are 2.4 million farm workers that work on farms and ranches in the United States, poor mental health and mental health conditions have become increasingly common among farm workers in the United States. Mental health conditions are conditions that affect your mood, your thinking, and your behavior, and they include depression, anxiety disorders, schizophrenia, eating disorders, and addictive behaviors. Because a large portion of farm workers are immigrants and many have less access to healthcare, this leads to an underreporting of mental health conditions in this group specifically. However, there are sparse studies and data that quantify the prevalence of mental health conditions in this group specifically. And for example, in a study that was conducted among 371 Latino migrant farm workers in North Carolina, it was found that farm workers experience high levels of anxiety, depression, and alcohol misuse, with poor mental health being documented for about 20 to 50% of migrant farm workers. The prevalence of mental health conditions has been linked to several stressors, some of which are economic hardship, isolation, and long work hours, just to name a few. Apart from having less access to healthcare, mental health stigma is one of the reasons why farm workers don't reach out for help. Mental health stigma is when someone sees another person negatively because of their mental health condition. In a 2021 survey that was conducted among 2,000 rural adults, it was found that a majority of rural adults, around 59%, say that there is at least some stigma around stress and mental health in the agriculture community. This includes 63% of farm workers. Next slide, please. Overall, the goal of this project, as Esmeralda mentioned earlier, was to disseminate mental and behavioral health resources to agricultural communities using gardening as a vehicle. So some of you all may be asking yourself, how is gardening connected to mental health? Gardening has been used for a long time as a therapeutic activity for people with mental health conditions, and it has been found to improve many aspects of mental health, focus, and concentration, improve mood and reduce negative thoughts and feelings, boost self-esteem since helping a plant grow is a huge accomplishment, and it also encourages social bonds either through community gardens or other group settings. The site where I conducted my practicum project, Knife Landing, has a community garden, and we wanted to use that as a vehicle to increase mental health services in the community. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the site for my project, which is Knife Landing, California. It is a small agricultural community in Yolo County, California. It is a rural and underserved community, which is located on the Sacramento River, approximately 25 miles northwest of Sacramento, in the northeastern portion of the county. If you all take a look at the diagram that is on the bottom right corner, you could tell specifically where Knife Landing is located in reference to the state overall and the county. Talking about its proximity to other rural communities, it is around 30 miles from Yuba and Sutter. And as of 2022, it has a population of 1,140, and demographic-wise, approximately 88% of its population is Hispanic or Latino, and approximately 8% is non-Hispanic white. Now I'll be going over the objectives for this project. So we had two objectives, which were to hold spaces for community leaders and members to gather and discuss mental health and gardening, and we were able to do this through focus groups. To elaborate a little bit more on what a focus group is, it is a guided group discussion, often with a moderator, where participants share their thoughts, feelings, and ideas about certain topics. And we also wanted to learn about the mental health concerns, the extent to which appropriate services exist, and what community members would like to see at a potential mental health gardening event. And we were also able to do this through our focus groups and surveys. So now I'm going to go over the pathway that I took for my project. This slide right here goes over all of the components from my project, and the next few minutes I will be talking about them a little more. But first I started with planning the questions for the focus groups and surveys. Then we started recruiting participants, and then we conducted focus groups and surveys. Once we got the data from the focus groups and the surveys, it was time to transcribe and analyze that data. And from that data, we obtained results, and I came up with a couple of recommendations based on those results. And once we had all the results in, we also used that to plan for the event and also carrying out the event. So question planning. So questions were drafted, and the questions included topics such as internet access, unity in the community, event, mental health, and gardening. And we chose these topics so they could help us guide the planning for the event. Once I had drafted up some questions, I obtained some feedback from various public health professionals, which include Professor Natalie D. Sosa, who is a professor at UC Davis, who has worked really closely with the Knights Landing community for many years, and she also has extensive experience in community-based participatory research. Once I obtained that feedback, I was able to make the question shorter, more straightforward, and unambiguous, and especially culturally sensitive, which was important to maintain flow within the focus group. And once I had all the questions done and drafted, I came up with a focus group script, which included all the focus group questions, which you can see here, along with some follow-up questions, some definitions, and some examples. And after that, the survey was also finalized. As you could all see on screen right now, these were the questions that were used for the focus group. I'll read out a couple of them. One of them is already circled. It's how or in what ways do you think gardening is linked or connected to mental health? And another question was, are you familiar with or do you know of any mental health or well-being resources in your community? We plan to have the focus group be around 90 minutes with around 10 minutes per question, but we were not too strict on time because we wanted to allow the conversations to be free-flowing and to be more of a discussion. Once the questions were finalized, it was time to start recruiting participants. And this was done through an email with the informational flyer to the right here. We sent them out both in English and in Spanish, and also recruitment was done through word of mouth. And also at the Thursday's YOLO Food Bank distribution, which takes place in Knights Landing. We made sure to advertise the focus groups as a community talk or plática comunitaria, and this was done to emphasize the intention of providing the community with a space to discuss both mental health and gardening, among other topics. But before we conducted the focus groups, my project preceptor and I, Esmeralda, we attended the Knights Landing community meeting to pitch the idea of our project and the focus group and to get suggestions from the community. And while at this meeting, community members expressed the importance of having an in-person option for those that did not have internet access. So we took that feedback into consideration and we offered 3 focus groups in English and in Spanish. 2 of them took place during the week and we made those take place during the evening. And we had another option on the weekend on Saturday from 10 to 12 p.m. to accommodate those that couldn't make it during the week. And we also offered a hybrid option, which in person, we conducted the focus groups at the Knights Landing Community Center and online through Zoom. We made reminder calls 2 days before each focus group, and we recorded them with the consent of participants. We also displayed the focus group questions on slides. As you can see in the picture on the bottom right corner, that's a picture from one of the focus groups where we displayed pictures on slides to make sure to stimulate thoughts within our participants. And for those that were on Zoom, we made sure that they felt included and we read out the chat comments and any questions that they may have. So for the surveys, they were conducted at the Knights Landing One Health Clinic and during their Sunday bi-weekly clinics and also at the resource table, which takes place weekly. And the surveys included questions on demographics, mental health, gardening, and community events. And before respondents filled out the surveys, we had them fill out a consent form, and I made sure to explain the type of questions, the purpose, and the objectives of the survey. And I also made sure to stay at somewhat a reasonable distance, just in case they had any question whatsoever about the survey or if they didn't understand anything. Right here, you can see, hopefully it's not too blurry, but these are some of the questions that we had for the survey. We had a variety of questions. Some of them were yes, no questions, free response, scaled, and check all that apply questions. So we can make sure to ask the appropriate question to get the information that we wanted. And once we had all the information from the focus groups and the surveys, it was time to transcribe and analyze the data. So transcribing is essentially turning that audio recording that we obtained from Zoom and turning that into a written or print form into a script, you could say. And to do this, I used HappyScribe, which is a transcribing software, and I use MaxQDA for coding. So a code is a word or a phrase that represents a single idea. When we think of the focus group script, a code could be a word or phrase that represents what one participant said about a certain question. And from those codes, I came up with categories, and categories are a word or a phrase to describe a group of or multiple codes. So in terms of the focus group script, you could think of a category as a word or a phrase that represents everything that was said for a certain question. And from those categories, finally, I came up with themes, which is also a word or phrase, but it's to describe a main or overarching idea. So from the categories, I came up with themes, which are only a couple. You have like 3 or 4 or more themes, depending on how much information was acquired. So if you think about it, I had a lot of code, fewer categories, and fewer themes. Later on in the results, I will go over examples of codes, categories, and themes that I obtained, and hopefully this will help paint a clearer picture. And for coding, I did 2 rounds of coding just to make sure that I was able to capture everything that participants said throughout the focus groups. Even though coding is great and it attempts to capture everything the participant said, and it captures the main ideas, some of the language and emotion can be lost. So I wanted to include a couple of quotes directly from the focus groups just to help you all see some of the things that were said throughout the focus groups. This quote specifically was obtained when I asked the question, what thoughts do you have about mental health or well-being in your community? This focus group participant said, I think that people who got sick, who got infected with COVID, I think it affected us even more. I have spoken with several people that I know who are infected, and many have depression. They are stressed, they are nervous, they are afraid to go out because they think that they are going to get it. So this quote captures how this participant felt that COVID affected their mental health and the community's mental health overall. This quote was obtained when I asked a follow-up question during the focus groups, and I asked how participants believe that farm workers' mental health was affected during the pandemic. I will be reading this quote in Spanish just to let you all know. This participant said, yo pienso que tuvieron miedo, pero se iban a trabajar de todos modos porque a veces no sabía qué iba a pasar, siempre con el miedo. Pensar de que si no voy a trabajar, voy a perder mi trabajo. Tenían que ir porque para ellos no hubo la ayuda que se les dio a todos. So the quote is also on the bottom in English, but this quote really mentions how this participant believed that the pandemic affected farm workers' mental health. Just to know, many of the participants are either farm workers themselves, have farm workers in the family, or know farm workers. This next quote was also obtained by asking the question about mental health or well-being in the community. And this question specifically talks about mental health stigma. This focus group participant said, also, something that we have noticed in our community in general is a stigma, right? We don't want to talk about this topic, or we feel embarrassed, or we don't want to be judged, or our family to be judged in general. So this quote captures how this participant believes that mental health stigma exists in the community, and how people that have mental health conditions or poor mental health do not feel comfortable sharing that for the fear of becoming judged. And finally, this quote was obtained when I asked participants how they believed gardening was connected to mental health. This participant said, I walk out of my yard and there I am outside and I relax. I water the plants or pull out the grass, or I'm also seeing what to do. And it has happened to me where it changes my expression, changes my way of thinking for a while. And I say, such a beautiful afternoon. And I'm sitting down, and that's what I try to do better. Spend more time outside the house and the garden. So this quote captures how this participant believes that gardening helps them relax and better their mental health. Overall, across all three focus groups, there was 17 participants, and the community talks served their purpose, which was to reconnect and build the community. A lot of the focus group participants were very happy to see each other. Many of them had not seen each other since before the pandemic. So it really did serve its purpose to reunite the community and hopefully get them to start interacting with each other again in person after the pandemic. As I mentioned earlier, I have a couple of examples of the codes, categories, and themes that I got from the focus group. And these codes specifically were obtained when I asked how participants believed that gardening was connected to mental health. So the codes right here represent things that directly from what participants said. So participants said that they love being in nature and that relaxed them. That they enjoy the products from gardening, such as plants, the fruits, vegetables, and how gardening gives them increased focus and how it helps them de-stress. From all of these codes, I came up with the category of gardening components. And from all the codes and categories, I came up with this theme to the right, which is that community members believe that gardening could be a resource to better mental health. This next slide shows some more examples of codes, categories, and themes that I got. The upper set of codes I obtained when I asked focus group participants about internet access in the community. And some of the things that were said include that there was limited internet services in the community. The provider prices were very expensive. There's limited hotspot options, that there's a lack of internet knowledge. And from all of those codes, I came up with the category of limited internet providers, access, and knowledge. And the bottom set of codes were obtained when I asked community members why they didn't go out to community events. And some of the things that were said was that there's limited promotion of events, there's a lack of follow-up, there's a lack of event information. And from these codes, I came up with the category of lack of communication. And from all of these codes, these two categories, I came up with the following theme, which was that limited internet providers, access, and knowledge make it difficult for community members to communicate with one another and to promote events and resources in the community. So these questions were asked to take them into consideration when planning the event. So the internet question served to figure out if community members would like to have a virtual event, which was overall a no. And then the bottom, the question about what things kept them from going to events was used to make sure to address those things when we were planning for our event. As much as I would love to go over all of the codes, all of the categories I came up with, that would take some time. And I just wanted to go over some of the overarching themes from the focus groups. So I'll go ahead and start reading them from left to right. So overall, participants believe that there's a lack of services in the community, including mental health services. There's a limited exposure to existing community services, and there's a limited dissemination of resources. Participants believe that poor mental health is prevalent in the community, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, which they perceive disproportionately affected them. And they believe that increased mental health services and resources would help improve the community's mental health overall. So a couple more themes. So participants have a lack of trust towards outsiders, specifically, for example, those from the county, because of the lack of follow-up to initiated projects. They don't see much progress on projects overall, and things that get promised do not get done. White and African American adults in night planning believe that the community is not united, and this is because of the language barrier that exists between themselves and the Latino portion of the community, which often leads them not to attend events and services offered only in Spanish. Focus group participants will like to have an event where there's a health fair, community resources, gardening workshops, activities for the whole family, music, and a theme for the event. And they would like for this event to be widely advertised to the whole community. And finally, participants believe that gardening could be a resource to help better mental health. Now I'm going to go over some of the results from the survey. So overall, there was 20 respondents, where 80% were Latino or Hispanic, 70% were women, 95% were aged 30 to 69, 90% had never used mental health resources, and 85% were at least somewhat interested in mental health education services, with 30% of those 85 being very interested. This figure shows a clustered bar graph that shows how survey participants would describe their mental health, where 85% of respondents believe that their mental health was excellent or good. But based on the conversations that were had throughout the focus groups, I believe that mental health stigma could have caused these results to not be entirely representative. And this was because throughout the focus group, mental health stigma was mentioned as being something that exists in the community, and how many of them felt judged about others, or others knowing that their family members might have a mental health condition or poor mental health. Even though at the beginning of the survey, it was mentioned that the information would only be used for research purposes and it would not be disclosed to anyone else, this may have caused some respondents not feel entirely comfortable when responding to some of these questions pertaining to mental health. And another thing that could have potentially skewed these results could be the lack of mental health condition symptoms. This was another thing that was mentioned throughout the focus group, how several participants believed they didn't know the symptoms of differing mental health conditions, and they also believed that it was a theme for the rest of the community. So this could have been one of the things that could have also skewed the results, because of they don't know the symptoms of poor mental health or mental health conditions. It could have caused them to not answer the question accurately. This figure is also a clustered bar graph, and it shows how survey participants will like mental health services delivered. And roughly around 70% of participants will like mental health services to be delivered in person. And this was also a theme throughout the focus group, where it was mentioned how they will like future mental health services and resources to be offered in person and not virtually. So once we had analyzed all of this data and taking it into consideration, it was time to start planning for the event. Overall, we noticed that participants thought favorably of gardening and believed that it has benefits for mental health, but they wanted other components to be a priority. One of these things being cholesterol, diabetes, and blood checks, and also reincorporating health fairs, as they mentioned that that was one of the things that they had a lot of in the past in the community, and they really loved health fairs because of the opportunity of coming together with the community and being able to take an opportunity to participate in the health screenings. Other things that were mentioned include having activities for the whole family, and also they wanted a gardening component to still be in place at the event. Not necessarily have the event be entirely focused on gardening, but they wanted to learn about different things about gardening, and also to learn more about the community garden, which a lot of them did not know existed. And many of them thought that the community garden was connected to the church and that it was only available for those that went to that specified church. And we made sure that the event was advertised both widely in person and online. And the event was advertised on the community Facebook page, in person at food distribution sites, local gas station and marts, the post office, community hall, family resource center, Sunday matches, Yolo County food page, Facebook page, banners at the town entrance, and a local promotora guided the marketing for the event. So for the event, there were 17 organizations and agencies that came out. And this event took place last Sunday, August 14th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., where we had approximately 80 people from the community come out. And once they were registered for the event, they were able to get this bingo card, where if they attended 10 different organizations or agencies, they were able to be entered in a raffle for gardening equipment. And this event really helped bring the community together and help build community. Apart from this event that took place on last August 14th, there will be another health fair on October 16th, so that people have multiple health fairs to attend, just in case they weren't able to make it to the last one. So here are some pictures from the event where different organizations came out. We also had COVID testing and vaccinations. We had the health education committee from the clinic come out and have a cooking demo. We had a winter healthcare come out and do health screening. And on the next slide, we also had a couple of booths having different activities for families and their kids. And we also had a gardening table or booth where we had different gardening activities, which included planting plants. And we also gave out plants. So once participants had went to the tables and filled out 10 of those spots, we gave them a small little plant to take home. And it was also an opportunity to promote the community garden. So we had some produce from the garden so people could see what happens at the garden. And at this booth, we also offered the WRASAP farm worker survey. It was available for community members to fill out, both by scanning a QR code and also on paper. Scanning the QR code did provide some challenges, as it didn't always load because of the poor internet connection, but some farm workers did fill out the survey on site. We had one community member and focus group participant that came out, and they had no idea that the event was because of the focus group that they had attended a couple of months ago. More specifically, they said, I had no idea that the event was a result of the community talk that we had a couple of months ago. This is wonderful. So they really enjoyed being able to come out to the event and seeing that participating at a community talk had that event as the outcome. So based on the focus groups and survey results that were obtained, I came up with a couple of recommendations for the community in the future. It is recommended to increase the presence of public Wi-Fi in the community and to initiate internet knowledge courses in the community. This is because throughout the focus group, it was mentioned that especially among older community members, that they did not have much knowledge on how to navigate the internet. So internet knowledge courses would be of great benefit. Another recommendation would be to encourage community members and organizations to have bilingual events, resources, and services in the community so they can have access to and take advantage of the different opportunities. This going back to what I mentioned earlier about white and African-American adults in the community not going to events that are only offered in Spanish. So hopefully this will help everyone feel welcome to go to the different events and services that are offered in the community. It is also recommended to create a web page to post community events and resources and encourage organizations to not only do this, but also to post and distribute flyers throughout the community for those that do not have internet access. And hopefully this addresses the lack of communication that was mentioned throughout the focus group. It is also recommended to build relationships with outside organizations and encourage them to offer services and resources to the community. Also recommended to encourage organizations to meet and receive feedback from the community before and after planning events, projects, or initiating services. And this is important to make sure that the organizations in the community have good communication because many other times if there's something that poses an obstacle to a project, the community members just think that that the project got stopped for some reason, but it is important to maintain this communication for increased transparency and to really build this relationship between the organizations and the community. And finally, it is recommended for whenever mental health resources and services are offered in the community, they should address mental health stigma and increase education surrounding the symptoms of differing mental health conditions. Now that I went over some of the recommendations for the future, I would like to address some of the strengths and the limitations from this project. This project utilized a mixed method approach, both through the focus groups and the surveys, where they were held both in English and Spanish. And we also had a hybrid option for focus groups, which allowed us to be able to have a larger portion of the community participate. Participants from the focus groups and surveys were either ag workers, ag production workers, or had family members in ag, or either were community garden volunteers. Some of the limitations for this project was that we did not have much input from males. So overall, the majority of focus group participants and survey respondents were female. And there was also a small survey sample size. And this was because a lot of people that go to a clinic and the resource table are the same week after week. And also we did not obtain demographic information from focus groups, which could have helped us to observe different trends between focus groups. And finally, which was a strength, was also a limitation, which was that they were offered only in English and Spanish. And this is because surrounding communities have farm workers that speak Punjabi, and we were not able to reach them. So that has been my presentation. Before ending the presentation, I would like to thank my practicum preceptors, Esmeralda and Angelina, for the support throughout the project, answering any question that I may have, and going totally above and beyond to help me with my project and everything that I needed to be successful this year. So thank you very much. I would also like to thank my project advisor, Dr. Lorena Garcia, for providing me with advice and guidance throughout my project. And I would also like to thank the night planning community for their cooperation and their kindness throughout my project. And finally, I would also like to thank WRASAP for providing me with the resources and giving me a chance to present to you all today. So I just wanted to say thank you to all for being here for my presentation today. And I would like to open the floor up to any questions you may all have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mauricio. That was a really good presentation. And I did want to emphasize that although the way that Mauricio presented his project sounds very researchy, it did not at all look like that in the community. Even the focus groups, like he said, we called them pláticas. And I was actually on a webinar earlier this morning from AgrSafe, another organization that works a lot with farmers rather. And they talked about pláticas being one of those things that allow for connection and really assessing behavioral mental health. So that was how we marketed the focus groups as pláticas. And really it was a community-based project. It took a lot of work on the ground, a lot of time promoting it to ensure that everybody in the community had a chance to hear about the event. Another really important thing was that we decided to do 2 of the health fairs in case they could not attend one of them, at least they had a chance to attend another one. And reaching out partners to bring out to the community. We even had one of the organizations donate or pay for a smoothie truck, so that because it's really hot here, where we had the event, it was really good to have that smoothie truck, because as individuals were going through the different booths, they were able to enjoy their smoothies, stay cool, and really enjoy the experience. So as we were putting this together, we saw more and more organizations trying to come together. And even when we were at the event, some of the organizations came up to us and said, hey, I think this other organization should come out for the next one. So we do expect that the next event will bring out more resources and will bring out more people and continue to create this community space. One fun thing was that a lot of people were rushing from the fair into the mass. So it was really good to see some of those people go to mass and then come back to the event again. Mauricio, I do not see any questions, but as a former MPH student in the same program you are in, I'm going to ask you the question that we all get, which was, what was your favorite part of the practicum?
I had many favorite parts about this project, such as the focus group, because I loved having the opportunity to interact with the community, to hear their concerns, and just be able to talk and reach out to the community. But of course, my other favorite part was the event. It was a really busy day where I was just kind of running around all over the place. But I really loved having the opportunity for the community to come out, interacting with all these organizations and agencies and just building relationships with them for so they could bring those resources to the community in the future. So I really loved just being there at the event and just interacting with community members and the agencies.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your hard work. I know that everybody really now recognizes you and looks for El Señor Mauricio. So that was fun to see. Okay, so just to continue on and be mindful of time, there are a few more announcements. We do still have the WRASAP Baseline Farm Worker Survey open, so we invite you to continue to distribute this survey to farm workers. The link is available in Spanish and in English, and there's also the QR code here to connect to it. If you go straight to the farmstress.us webpage, you will find the link to the survey on there. And some of the upcoming farm stress related events, we have QPR gatekeeper trainings that are coming up. Those will take place on September 1st, October 6th, and November 3rd. There's no need to attend all three of them. They're just different opportunities to attend. And these are hour-and-a-half trainings on suicide prevention. These are the question, persuade, refer trainings. I'm going to put in the chat also a link to connect to signing up for those QPR gatekeeper trainings. Okay. And lastly, again, just to remind everybody that the small grants funding opportunity is still open. The next deadline to submit is going to be September 30th. And just to summarize, it is an opportunity to apply for up to $10,000 of funding on the categories of outreach, professional development, and translation. We also encourage you to join the network and also to sign up for our listserv. If you go again to the farmstress.us webpage, you'll see this tab that says get the latest news and updates, and that's where you can sign up for the newsletter. And again, just to thank everybody for joining us today to hear about this project, which has been one of the outreach projects for WRASAP. Are there any last questions? I don't see any questions. So with that, I'm gonna wish everybody a good afternoon or evening, depending on where you're joining us from, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.